the US oil spot, where we have been noticing some interesting trading setup come up at this point in time. In fact, I've been able to capitalize on a sell position right now, which is not really a sign that the sell position will be the order of the day. Now, before we go into the details on how we will be positioning ourselves for the next move, let's scale up into the higher time frame so we can have an holistic perspective into what is really going on in this particular market. Now, our analysis for this week is going to be starting from the daily time frame. Now, before I go into the technicalities of price action in the last couple of months, let's quickly talk about the fundamental factors that is going to be driving the market sentiment. And in fact, we want to know what is the latest development in the oil sector, which of course will be affecting the market sentiment. Now, the first one here that came in early this morning was the fact that we had a news that crude oil prices may find support from Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak's statement, where he mentioned that the Russian government is considering deepening oil export cuts in December by potentially 50,000 barrels per day or more to bolster global oil prices. Now, this additional cuts will go beyond the 300,000 barrels per day that had already been agreed upon for this year. Now, in addition, we have an adverse weather condition in Russia, which has contributed to the support for crude oil prices as well. Now, in addition to this one, remember we talked about the geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, where we have a situation with concerns rising due to the Houthi attacks on ships near Yemen. Now, the attacks have raised worries about potential disruption in oil supply, leading shipping firms to consider avoiding the Suez Canal as Houthi militants in Yemen escalated their assault on commercial vessels in the Red Sea. Now, this is likely going to be affecting or disrupting the supply of oil commodity. And of course, when there is a disruption of supply, what happens? There is an increase in demand, and when there is an increase in demand, the tendency for price to rise now becomes very, very likely. Now, another thing that is likely going to be supporting the bullish forecast is the news we had last week. I think I mentioned this earlier, that the International Energy Agency, that is IEA, said that also oil consumption will increase by 1.1 million barrels per day in 2024, hereby contributing to the support for a bullish outlook on the oil market. Then finally, in the last couple of months now, we saw how the US dollar index has experienced a nearly 4% weakening. A further decline could stimulate oil demand from other countries as it becomes much more available to purchase oil. Now, one thing we want to understand here is that as the US dollar drops in value, the price of oils become cheaper because the oil is more or less a US dollar denominated asset. And when price drops, like when the US dollar drops in value, what this simply means is that for those who are in the developed company or third world economies and developing economies will find the oil prices cheaper to buy, and this could increase the demand for oil where they want to stockpile this asset, taking advantage of the reduced value of the US dollar. Now, with the way from all the fundamental factors we have here, it is more or less leaning towards an idea of buying this particular asset. However, it is not all the time that this usually happens, as we could see some new development which is not yet in the media that could affect the asset. So in that regard, let's take a technical dissection of this current market structure. Now, from a technical standpoint, what I did here was to take into consideration the nature of price September, and what What I was able to come up with here is the fact that price action has been very bearish. And to further emphasize this bearish momentum, you will see we have, after connecting the series of lower highs, we have a couple of descending trend lines to work with. Look at one here, which I will be calling my temporary descending trend line. And this one right here is the major one. And the fact that price action remains below the descending trend line welcomes the idea that we look out for more selling opportunities. Now, in addition to this descending trend line, something interesting happened since the beginning of this month. We begin to notice that despite the strong bearish momentum, as soon as price got into that $68 area, we begin to notice how sellers were struggling to push price to the downside. And this gives us a sign that majority in the market are considering oil prices cheap enough to buy at this particular price zone. And in that regard, it begins to look as if price wants to transition into a reversal setup. Now, to help us guide our decisions for today's trading session, for this week's trading session, I was able to identify a key level at the $72.50 area, which will be guiding our trading decisions for this week. And of course, you know how we use our key levels in this community. As long as price action remains below the key level, we want to be looking out for patterns and structures that supports the idea of selling. But if price breaks out of the key level, then we want to be looking out for patterns and structures that will support the idea of buying that asset. And one interesting thing about this key level, it is how it also shares a beautiful confluence with both of this descending trend line we have here. Now, if it so happens that we have a reversal setup, then a breakout of the key level will also have broken out of those descending trend line, hereby confirming that buyers are getting stronger. But if selling pressure persists below the key level, then we want to be looking out for patterns that will support the idea of selling. Now, when we scale down into the 4 hours time frame, we begin to see a beautiful setup that we will be using to guide our decision. Price remains below the $72.50 level, which further affirms that sellers may likely be dictating the pace. So we will be watching the $70.60 area to see if price action will be breaking down the structure to the downside to further affirm the strength of the sellers. Now, with all the informations we have gathered on the higher time frame, let's scale down into the 1 hour time frame where we want to see how market participant has started this week. Now, scaling down into the 1 hour time frame, we begin to see things more clearly. Now, let's zoom right into what has been going on since the beginning of this week. Now, the first thing I observed here is the fact that price action was initially within a range. As you will see, price was confined within the $72.60 level and the $71.96 area to emphasize the level of indecision going on in this market. And of course, you know how we do it in this community, especially when we identify a flat range like this, which emphasizes the uncertainty in the market. We exercise patience as long as price action still remains within the range and wait for either a breakout of the resistance line to give us an opportunity to buy, which of course is yet to happen, or the breakdown of the support line to give us an opportunity to sell. And that in fact led to the triggering of my first sell position for the week. And at this point in time, I'm currently running with about 92 pips in profit right now. And for those of us who had capitalized on this one, well done to you for being on standby to capitalize on this move. And if you are taking advantage of this one, I will be suggesting that you move your stop losses accordingly, secure this current position while we wait for new setups that will be guiding our trading decisions for today. And in fact, I would like to see price break down the $70.60 area before I can start considering adding more sell positions to my existing trade here. So mark out this level as well. Now, for those of us who had missed out on this sell position, probably one way or the other, you missed out or waiting for confirmations to happen before you join that move. Well, the week is still very, very early, and there are still chances that we could capitalize on that uptrend scenario. Now, one of the things we are going to be looking out for here is to wait and see if the market will come back and retest the structure or the ascending trend line we identified here to continue the downtrend scenario. So let's exercise patience at this juncture and wait to see how the market will react. And in fact, if it gives us a new setup to join the decline, then we could actually join the downtrend continuation. Now, another thing I would like to emphasize here is the $70.60 area, which we identified on the higher time frame. Now, for us to add more sell positions here, I would like to see price take out all the buy positions here. Remember, this area has a memory for buying power. So if price action happens to break down, retest the structure, this will definitely welcome more sell positions in this market. Then another thing I want to mention here, which is very, very important and peculiar to the structure, is this descending trend line we spotted on the higher time frame. Remember, we talked about this trend line being broken to the upside. Now price action is currently trading around that trend line. So it is very, very important that for those of us who had sold, ensure you move your stop losses accordingly, secure this current sell position while we wait and see how the market will react to that trend line. Now, one thing here is if price action, this current candle closes below the structure, I'm of the opinion that price may likely continue to the downside. However, if this candle closes in such a way that it gives us signs that buyers are still present, maybe it closes in the form of a hammer candle, or we begin to notice a reversal setup in the next couple of hours around this area, it could be an opportunity to join an uptrend move while we wait and see if price would retest the structure to push price to the downside, or this ascending trend line to push price to the downside. So this is my view on the US oil spot for today. I encourage us all to mark out these levels on our chart as we currently have a sell bias going on right now, and we continue to look out for selling opportunities around this area. But if it happens that price action at any point in time breaks out of the key level and the $72.60 area and price is back above this ascending trend line, then we want to be looking out for buying opportunities. So these are my views on the US oil spot for today. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to let me know in the comment section.